Well, welcome this morning to our all-hands meeting for the fall semester. As you know, these have kind of become a little bit of a tradition for us in the Institute, twice a year, once in each of the academic semesters. And I personally have found them to be really helpful to think about where we are, and really helpful to think about all of the various things that are happening across the Institute of Ag and Natural Resources. And as you're going to see this morning, just like we've seen in several of the past ones, there's a tremendous amount happening. There's a tremendous amount that we're planning for in the next couple of years that will impact all of us in the Institute in very positive ways, I think. So I hope that's the same for all of us in the Institute, that you find these very useful and helpful, and that's our intent to be able to share so much with you. As you know, this is actually connected in various ways. So there are about a couple hundred or so of us here in the East Union on East Campus. And then we webcast this out, live stream it across the state at our research and extension centers and various extension sites throughout Nebraska. So typically we have 1,000 to 1,100 people that are viewing this across the Institute, and I'm really proud of that, and very pleased that so many people plug in and are able to hear what's happening. I'm going to forewarn you, as I always do, that we're going to cover a lot of ground this morning, and that's because we have a significant number of announcements to make to you this morning, particularly around the next wave of our faculty hiring process, and we are at a point of being able to announce that today, and we're very excited about what that holds for us. So buckle down, get ready. We'll get through this as fast as we can. I understand there's supposed to be a 10:15 this morning emergency broadcast system test. So I have a goal in mind, okay? So here's what we will try to do in the next hour to hour and plus. I want to spend a little bit of time here at the front of the presentation talking to you about where I think we've been the last 4 years. This is my 5th year. I'm entering my 5th year now as in this role. It's hard for me to believe that, but it's true. I came in July of 2010. So it kind of is a time of being retrospective, introspective, if you will, about where we've been, what we've done, what those changes have looked like, and thinking about how to move forward beyond that. So I want to do a little bit of that up front. I also want to fix in your mind, if you will, that I think we're at a real inflection point in the Institute's history. And I hope when I show you about those past 4 years and what we're planning for these next 6 years will reflect that very accurately to you. You'll be able to see that. You'll be able to understand why I've shared with our leadership this summer that I really think we're at an inflection point with a steep curve ahead of us. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about money. We always want to know where we are in terms of our resource base, what that looks like going into the next planning cycle of our budget, particularly in terms of state support that we will be in the legislature with this coming year for setting of our next 2-year biennium budget. I will cover with you the plans and the approvals that we made yesterday for the next wave of faculty hiring that will play out now over the coming year. I want to spend a little bit of time talking to you about this resource optimization task force that we've had at work earlier this year and how that now will play out, looking at the recommendations that the task force brought forward this summer in their report. A few leadership transitions, new people that we have brought on board since our last all-hands meeting in January. And for some fairly new ones, very new ones, fresh out of the oven, so to speak. And then we'll also honor some folks, as it has become our tradition in this meeting, where in the spring we honor staff, Untitled Innovation Staff Awardees and retirees that are retiring from the Institute. In our fall all-hands meeting, we recognize the Untitled Innovation winners in research, teaching, extension, and team activities. So we'll do that toward the end of our presentation. And then a few upcoming events that I just want to bring to your attention that the Institute will be hosting this fall. So with that said, let's just look back a little bit at the last 4 years. So as I said, this is the 8th all-hands meeting for me. So the first one we held was in January of 2011. We've had 2 a year since. This is the second one this year for us. So this is the 8th all-hands meeting that we've had. And in reflecting back over those 4 years, this sign to me really was appropriate. That there was an old life behind us in the Institute, that some that was good, some that was troublesome. There's a new life in the Institute that has some risk and uncertainty associated with it, but a lot of growth that we're experiencing in ways we're trying to do that over this last 4 years. You might remember that first all-hands meeting, for those of you that were here in January of 11, followed a leadership retreat that the Institute held at Nebraska City at the Lead Lodge there. First one the Institute had held like that, involving the unit administrators, the center directors, the upper administration of the Institute, just thinking about what the possibilities were for the Institute. This was a picture from the end of that retreat that we found earlier this summer in our archives. I counted, there's about 40% of the people in that picture that have changed jobs since January 2011. People had had long service to the Institute, particularly as department chairs or heads that have turned over. We had a lot of new people join our leadership team over that last 4 years. Out of that first leadership retreat, this is kind of what I summed the feeling up being. We had had 10 to 15 years, I'll say, of time in the Institute where there was a lot of uncertainty relative to budget. Not atypical of most of the land-grant universities across the country, particularly in the agricultural sciences and those fields related to natural resources and agricultural sciences. And there had been a lot of uncertainty there. Budget cuts, some that were deep, some that were painful, hurtful. You might think that word applies to some of those that were there. I heard about those in depth when I interviewed for this position. And the biggest question that I was asked in that interview was, what will you do and how will you behave when we have a budget cut? What will your process be? How will you figure out what we need to do when we have declining resources? Because that was the environment. That was the culture that we had and we had been in. And so I think a lot of these words were apropos, to be real honest, of where we kind of thought we were when we had that retreat. We came out of that retreat, though, realizing those things and realizing that the opportunities that were there for agriculture were significant looking ahead, and that there were going to be opportunities to be creative with our funding in ways that perhaps we had not been in the past, both with funding we already had, as well as with funding that we were going to seek and look for to be able to grow our programs. A year later, we held a second retreat. You'll remember that January of 2011 all-hands meeting was when we rolled out these kind of big, audacious goals around what we called IANR to 2025. And we framed the idea of going down this road of planning around implementation of ways we could do things differently. And there were 53 recommendations that came out of that process that spring from 11 different work teams that we had across various sectors and things about the Institute. In July of 2011, we met in North Platte for that retreat, and we went through those one by one, all 53 of them. We had Chancellor Perlman and the leadership of the university sitting there listening and watching with us. And we decided these are the things that we can do now, that we can implement changes in. Mostly they were bureaucratic process type things. The number of pieces of paper that we have to sign for various reasons, that we got rid of some. And a number of other things that we felt like we could implement with resources that we already had. And we began to change those things following that retreat. There was another set of recommendations that we identified as things we needed to address, that we needed to put wheels into motion to change and work on that following year. About a third of them fell into that category. And there were about 8 or 9 of these what I will call the really sticky wicket items that were big issues that we needed to address that we now are down to the last 2 to have to address in those 53. So that was where we were in the summer of 2011. And David Jackson's picture is on here for a reason, because David was in a leadership training experience at the time in APLU, the Public and Land Grant Universities Association, and he took that on as a leadership challenge to try to guide this bunch of cats through these 53 recommendations, and did a really nice job of it in allowing us to get to that point. We also, and I should point out this last bullet on the slide, we changed the way we started thinking about resources in terms of our decisions. If you were in the Institute in 2005, the process that happened when we were trying to decide a position to fill, for example, a retirement in a department or a transition in a department, that position would come forward from the department head. It would go to the Dean's Council, and it would go into the pool, quote unquote, the salary pool. And the deans would then decide what got spit back out of the salary pool. So it was a little bit of a black box in and black box back out, so to speak. We decided at that retreat we were going to change that process. And the process we have used since is that we have a salary pool of dollars to work from, and we use the entire institute to engage in that process, to identify what we think our priorities should be for hiring, working across departments and across units and centers, hopefully, in that process, to be able to identify how to use those resources. We've done that once successfully in our phase 1 hiring. I think we have a very good place to go from with phase 2 using that same process. And I'm very proud of that the leadership is now at the table making those decisions. In July 2012, we declared we were going to grow. And we did it very decidedly, very decisively, saying that even though the land grant system was contracting, so to speak, in agriculture nationally, we weren't going to do that. And we were going to grow the institute by what now is 14% in our tenure track faculty ranks, because we needed those resources and those people to address the issues that are out there. And that was a big risk that we took, trying to redeploy resources to make sure we had financially good sound footing to be on for those positions. And we went down that process with the faculty growth plan that you now know about, and have concluded almost all of those hirings in those 36 positions. July 2013, a year ago, at that leadership retreat, this is what we were celebrating. So we had said we were going to hire all these new folks, we were going to grow the institute in areas of priority emphasis, in cluster areas of priority emphasis. We had collaboratively then across the institute and the university gone out to hire these folks, and we were at a point where about 75% of those hires had been made in a very short period of time. And I specifically remember my colleague Ellen Weisinger, a good friend and colleague Ellen, the Senior Vice Chancellor in Academic Affairs, saying to me in the year before, when we were going through this process of identifying these 36 positions, saying, Ronnie, do not do that all at once. You might want to do 15 of them, and then another 10, and then another 10, because it will be a disaster trying to hire all those people at one time. And I said, we can't wait. We can't afford to wait to do that. We're going to go down this road. We're going to try to hire the very best people. And I was very proud of the fact that in less than a year, we had 75% of them named to those positions. And now most of those folks are now on campus making a big difference. Then we found ourselves about a month ago here in 2014. So the leadership retreat that we had at the end of July with that same group of leaders, which for them, the big event was how are we going to hone down 63 positions to 20 to determine what the next set of talent and expertise that we would add to the institute would be. I proposed to them that I thought we were really at a point where we could plateau, as this line shows, or we could continue the trajectory up. And my sense is that we're at this inflection point where it's going to be like this, not like this, because of the talent we've hired, the additional talent we're going to be bringing into board, and new resources that I think are going to be available to help us do that. So these are the kinds of things we focused on in that retreat. We certainly focused on growing the faculty ranks further and enhancing our faculty and staff growth. We talked a lot about enhancing the new faculty we have brought onto campus and having a success network for them as they integrate into the Institute. We talked a lot about optimizing our state resources that you will hear a little bit more about. We talked about this 5% overhead assessment that we talked a little bit about in January and what that was going to mean, how we were going to use that. I'll refer to that a little bit later in the talk. We talked a lot about Innovation Campus because of the huge impact that is having immediately ahead of us in the Institute. I'll talk about that this morning, and a number of other things. And this is what I told them I thought we needed to look like. That we didn't need to just be on the middle line, we needed to be on the upper line, and that we really are at this inflection point. So if nothing else comes away from you with this meeting this morning, you don't take anything else away, I hope you will have that image put into your head. That really is where I think we are, and it's a very great place to be. We said this 4 years ago. I still believe that is the mission that we're on, and I think we're making great progress toward it. You know about the university's goals. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly, and I want you to get the idea of where we are leading the university in these goals. In almost every one of them, the Institute is leading the university in achieving these goals. So Chancellor Perlman, you'll remember 4 years ago, articulated these goals in his State of the University address. Growing student enrollment by 5,000 students campus-wide, increasing our faculty ranks to meet that growth in students by some 170 tenure-track faculty, increasing our six-year graduation rate from the low 60s up to at least 70% university-wide, increasing the recognition and stature of our faculty, particularly national and international recognition, successfully launching Phase 1 of Innovation Campus, and growing our research expenditures from just under $200 million per year campus-wide to $300 million per year campus-wide. So those have been our 5 goals. They were articulated initially, 5 goals, initially as a 5-year set of goals. So they would have been 2016, 2017 in their maturation. He since has kind of elevated that to 2020, as you might recall last winter. Here's the Institute's performance on those goals, and I'm very proud of this. I'm very proud of our people for what they have done in these areas. This fall, Kastner has its 10th year of consecutive student growth. We don't have the census numbers yet. We won't get those for another week or so, but we expect that number is going to be somewhere in the 7% range in increase this fall. That's huge. Last year it was closer to 4%, so we're still seeing that increasing growth in our student numbers. You'll notice there that NCTA, our 2-year technical program at Curtis, its first year class numbers are up 53% this fall. Huge increase for them, much due to the new efforts the new dean there is putting in recruitment. We're very proud of that, very excited about that for them. Our research expenditures this past fiscal year ending June 30th broke our all-time record, which previously had been fiscal year 2 years ago during 2012 when we had a $72 million research expenditure number. We were at $80 million the end of this fiscal year, so we're very excited about that record being broken and continuing to go up. Our 6-year graduation rate in Ag and Natural Resources currently sits at roughly 78%. The university average is closer to 64%. We're very proud of that. Room to grow yet in that goal. We have increased our tenure-track faculty in the Phase 1 hiring process, plus some faculty hired in the Water for Food Institute with funding from them by 46 tenure-track faculty since those goals were established, and I will announce to you this morning the next 34 that we will hire in phase 2. Not 20, but 34 we will be hiring in this next phase. And we certainly are excited that we are leading the development with the help of Dan and Ann that we'll talk about later of phase 1 of Innovation Campus and exciting opportunities that that's going to create for us in a couple of our important sectors. So here's where we have yet to go in these goals. Enrollment. I said when we launched the goals that I thought the Institute needed to be at 4,200 total students between undergraduate and graduate enrollment. We have increased by 500 students during these last several years. So we're 500 of the 1,200 on our way to that goal in achieving that. Now these numbers, Tiffany is looking at me like, don't misquote this, Dr. Green. These numbers reflect every student studying in an agricultural discipline in the UNL campus. So this includes biochemistry majors and arts and sciences that are delivered by our faculty, taught by our faculty, biological systems engineering in the College of Engineering, for example. So it includes all of those students collectively when I say that we have 3,500 roughly students studying in the ag fields. We want to increase that by 700 by 2020. Which is another 20% growth in our student numbers. I think that's achievable, and I think we see the numbers still reflecting that that is achievable. Research expenditures, we were at $80 million last year. I think our goal for 2020 is $120 million minimum. And we think that's very achievable. We've been on that path to be able to see that happen, and I think some of the dominoes are going to begin to fall for us to see that happen. That's a sizable growth in research expenditures. You might have noticed last week the success of Dr. Zemplini's group and a cross-transdisciplinary group that was successful in being awarded a new COBRA grant for UNL in the area of obesity and nutrigenomics. And we're very excited for that team across the campus for the work that they'll have in that COBRA over the next several years. And we're now planning the next COBRA, which if I have my tea leaves read right, will also involve the Institute's research faculty as leaders in that next COBRA. So we're excited about that opportunity that has just landed. 6-year graduation rate, 78% I said is our current number. I'd like to have that at 82, I think is doable. And we will continue to work on enhancing our success of students and retention of students and graduation of students to make that a reality. Our faculty hiring, we're well ahead of where we need to be on this growth curve, obviously. When you count the 46 I just talked about and the 34 that we're getting ready to hire, not all of those 34 will be new, but about 10 of them are new faculty lines. That will get us basically beyond our part of the goal of the university for the faculty growth number. Innovation Campus, the first 350,000 square feet will be completed next July. So if you've been down Salt Creek roadway, you'd see the construction that's happening there now. The 2 buildings that are completed, the remainder that is under construction currently on both sides of the street. That 350,000 square feet is scheduled for occupancy, Dan Duncan, correct? Occupancy, July of 2015, that our Food Science and Technology Department will occupy. The greenhouse complex, that's the separated part on the east side of the street there, is scheduled for occupancy in March of 2015. So that will happen, is now happening in front of us. We have agreement with the developer that when we move in next summer, it will start the next 80,000 square feet directly north of the greenhouses. So that will happen, and we'll have space to grow into for that next phase of Innovation Campus. That's exciting stuff. You've seen these pictures. I've showed it to you now for 2 years plus as we've been talking about this. To be able to see materials coming out of the ground that have screws and nails attached to them is really exciting. It's been a long time coming, and it's exciting to see that happen. And it's even more exciting to me that almost all of that big facility you see south of the 4-H arena, the new conference center that's now open and the Innovation Commons that's now open, is food science. and food innovation. So seeing that opportunity for our faculty in this area and for innovation in this area is tremendously exciting. We had last week, I was unable to be here due to a family concern, but last week we had a great meeting to kick off an Advanced Sanitation Alliance with these companies all at the table, related to new ways to think about sanitation in the food industry, material science, nanoscience approaches to looking at food safety and food sanitation. So we're excited about those opportunities like that we see coming to Innovation Campus. That's what it looks like Sunday, Monday, Labor Day. That's what it looked like Labor Day. So you can see that on webcam, and you see there's the greenhouse complex. Here's the conference center that's now open, and I know most of you have probably been now in the conference center for one function or another. The Innovation Commons building that houses Water for Food, they're moving in later this month. Innovation Campus and UTech Ventures, Industry Relations, and Office of Research and Economic Development, along with some tenant space. This is the Food Innovation Center. You can see going up, so the fourth floor structure is now taking shape. The food science faculty will be located on the second floor of the former Industrial Arts building, along with all of their classroom space. So a really exciting new facility for them. ConAgra and the Sanitation Alliance will be in the first floor pilot plant space of that former Industrial Arts building. This is where the next 80,000 square feet will go that I referred to earlier. So tremendously exciting to see that happen, and huge opportunities, I think, for us as we move forward. I've showed you our operating budget. This isn't one of Harvey's goals, this is one of my goals. We started at about $180 million operating budget in the Institute in 2010. My goal is for that to be $300 million by 2020. This year, we will be somewhere in the neighborhood of $220 million in our base IANR budget. And so we've grown, as you can see, the last few years, we've grown that budget by $40 million. All sources, all comers of money coming to that budget. We don't always realize that. Sometimes we're able to step back and think, do we have enough resources to do what we need to do? Those resources are growing, and that's due to the faculty and the staff that we have and the ability that we're attracting those dollars to our work. So another $80 million in the next 6 years. So now you see that inflection point that I was talking about? Those percentages are that inflection point. I don't mean to be crass and cold about it with numbers, but it should reflect to you why I think that is the steep curve that we're on to be able to see those things happen. I'm going to skip those. You've seen them before. Okay. I'm going to click through very quickly a series of slides here that show you how we're not only investing in people, but we're also investing in physical assets. Infrastructure that we need to be able to deliver. Now, Innovation Campus kind of sits over on its own. You've already seen that. I showed you this slide in January that we manage just under 39,000 acres across IANR on the campus and across the state in our research and extension centers. That is growing. I expect that number to grow by at least a quarter in the next decade. So there's a lot of asset base that we have here in the state that we need to keep building and growing and maintaining, frankly, in terms of the maintenance of that asset. The East Campus Master Plan, this is part of the UNL Campus Master Plan. Those are opportunity sites for new facilities on the campus that the Sasaki team identified a year ago when this plan was developed for the campus. And as you'll see as we go through these slides, there are several of those that are already targeted and will be moving forward in the next couple of years with new growth. Few that are already completed. The Biofibers Lab right across the street on the corner from Ag Hall to the west, former part of the textiles fashion merchandising design department. A studio there has been converted into a biofibers lab for Dr. Yang in his biofibers and textiles work. Opened that facility earlier this spring. Popcorn research with ConAgra. This is the new headquarters for that out at 84th and Havelock across from the Lancaster County Events Center on our property there that was built by ConAgra. The 35 East is the name of the development, but the new building by Valentino's, or now that Valentino's is in, across Holdridge is now open. There was an open house for that earlier this past month, and we have 13 units for rent. Call Jeff Bassford, he can get you a key, okay? This is for visitors to our campus, including our own faculty and staff from across the state. And we were spending about 1,300 hotel nights a year in Lincoln to accommodate people that came to visit the Institute. We thought, why not have our own facility across the street? So this is a test for us. We're going to see how it works. They gave us a short-term lease to figure it out. And we're testing it to see how it works this next year. Fully furnished, single-bedroom studio apartments where we can house visitors to our campus. So Jeff's office in business and finance is managing that facility. New entomology building at the West Central Research and Extension Center at North Platte that is substantially completed. The final touches are going on to that facility that one of our new hires will be working with there at North Platte in entomology. The Snyder building, which is the headquarters building for that same Research and Extension Center at North Platte, new addition put onto it that is now complete for housing graduate students, professional offices for graduate students that are doing their work. At West Central, they had outgrown their facility, and just behind that, you see the new conference part of that facility that was opened just 2 years ago, where we had that retreat in 2012. The Panhandle Research and Extension Center at Scottsbluff, the headquarters, the Elliott building there, has had a complete renovation over the last 18 months. It was badly needed for that facility. We're very proud of how that now looks. About a $3 million deferred maintenance job on that headquarters for our scientists and extension personnel at Scottsbluff. Animal handling facility and the feedlot facility, badly needed there as well. At Scottsbluff, just completed and now in use for the animal nutrition group working there. High Plains Ag Lab at Sidney, also part of the Panhandle District of the state, had been part of an old ordnance facility, old munitions facility for many years in an old original ordnance building was where the headquarters was housed. It was in bad need of replacement. Charlie Finster, one of our emeriti faculty from the Panhandle District, was a spearhead in getting this effort underway to raise funds for a new facility there dedicated this summer. So very excited about that new headquarters at the High Plains Ag Lab. Commodity trading room in the Ag Econ department, now online in the basement of Filley Hall, all from private funding. Some $700,000 in private funding has been donated to this effort. And as you will see in our domino effect, this facility will actually move upstairs into Filley Hall across from the department head's offices when food science moves to Innovation Campus into a larger room that will accommodate more students as part of that commodity trading floor. The 4 statues of the former Secretaries of Agriculture will go into place on the concrete that's been laid out to the south of us here the last few weeks. If you're on campus, you will have seen some re-landscaping, I'll define it that way, and some concrete bases being put into place where the 4 statues that are now complete of the former Secretaries of Agriculture will be dedicated on September the 20th. So you'll see those statues going up, Jill, I think starting next week, correct? The installation of those. They're beautiful life-size statues of Clifford Hardin, Clayton Yoder, Mike Johans, and J. Sterling Morton. This is the area that they'll go in, just a schematic of that plaza. This past week, as the State Fair had its run for this year, the 145th State Fair, we opened a new interactive museum quality facility there on agriculture and natural resources, led by UNL Extension, called Raising Nebraska. $3.2 million raised privately to fund this effort. They have another $1.8 million goal, I think Ann and Chuck and Kathleen, to provide support, ongoing support and maintenance for this facility. It is phenomenal. If you were there and able to see it, you will know what I mean by that. It's all interactive, technically driven about high science agriculture and the food system that is supported by high science agriculture. Cargill provided a $1 million gift to be the naming sponsor for this exhibit. It was announced last week. Their executives are there this morning touring the facility with Dean Hibbert and Kathleen Lodel. So very exciting development there. It's about 70% complete. The other 30% will be infilled this coming year for next year's fair. And I should mention that's a year-round exhibit. It's not just during the fair. It is being manned by UNL Extension. Beth Janning is there permanently on that site, managing that facility for school children, for public groups, and it'll be open year-round as an interactive site for the state. South gates for East Campus, I've told you about this before. You might have seen the flags going up in the grass there the last week. The construction will start on those in October, November timeframe for that to be in place before winter weather sets in. Stumpf International Wheat Center, the dedication is now planned just before Christmas for that facility that Marvin Stumpf and his family have donated to the university for wheat research in limited rainfall areas in southwest Nebraska. So excited about that. That construction is now underway. East Campus Rec Center will come online next summer, finally. So we're excited about that. You can see that real time as it's developing around us, and we're excited about that coming on board this coming year. The Veterinary Diagnostic Lab is in its final stage of approval with the Board of Regents. In September, they will hear the intermediate design of that, and we'll move forward with construction for that new $45 million facility over by the Vet Sciences Complex starting early 2015. So we're excited about that. We anticipate that will be a roughly early 2017 opening for that facility. Again, some $4 million in money had to be raised to support that with the supplementing state funds, and we were successful with Ann and Josh and the foundation's help in achieving that goal recently. The Innovation Campus I've already mentioned. I won't belabor that any further, but you know that's obviously a big deal for us coming in this next year. Residence halls. Now, I'm going to pause a bit here and say all decisions are not made yet on final. We are going to build a new residence hall on East Campus. That is going to happen. It will happen with Board of Regents approval in November, that we will be able to move forward starting next summer. What I don't know is where it's going to be, okay? So there's been a lot of discussion about it being on the Biochem Hall site. There is concern about that site relative to the size of the building that will be required. We're sorting our way through that to make sure it's appropriate, an appropriate scale for that size building to be juxtaposed to this building and to Keim and to this part of the campus, the Arboretum, the library. My guess is something's going to go there. I just don't know if the whole residence hall is going to go there. We might even split it and have one residence hall there and another residence hall on the Burr Fedde site with two different kinds of housing there. One suite style, one regular dorm style. So we're going to get a new residence hall. I just can't tell you where it's going to be yet and exactly what it's going to look like. Those decisions will be made before our next all-hands meeting in January. So that potential space that's there, we are already planning the move of all the people out of biochem and the move of food science next summer. There's been considerable work already invested in how we put everybody in the right place and we get all of our groups in the right place out of that process. C.Y. Thompson, the Board of Regents on September 19th, has this program statement in front of them for approval for a $22.5 million renovation of C.Y. Thompson. Those funds have to be raised, at least half of them yet have to be raised. So it won't be started until we raise that money. So that's what do I want to call it? A goal for us, a big out there goal for us to be able to turn that into an interactive learning commons similar to what's been done with Love North downtown. The renovation of greenhouses, that is now well underway. with the group working in that area. Tala Awada, George Graff, Tom Clementi are providing leadership from the faculty in that area. The current discussion is around whether we might build a field site on Innovation Campus. Dan, it won't be next to the building. It'll be somewhere not in buildable space. But a field site that would translate the automated plant phenotyping information to the next field scale. So we would have an imaging type field plot that we would be able to use externally. That will not be cheap. We have a proposal in front of one of our major donors about that currently, and they're quite interested in that possibility that hopefully we'll bring to light. The School of Natural Resources, this isn't their plan, the current one, this is an older one, but the area north of Hardin Hall to be designed into an outdoor nature classroom, a natural resources classroom. And I understand from John Carroll and his faculty that they have a next round of that proposal and thinking that they've been underway and working on this summer that we just received. I mentioned the optimization task force, and I'll move through this very quickly because I want to get to the positions now. But as I told you in January, we were assigning this task force to look at whether we had optimized our physical resources across the state for contemporary needs today. That had not been done since the Institute was formed in 1972. So we had 40 years of history where we had not needed to do that necessarily, but we're at a point where we needed to look at it today. And I also wanted them to look at our technology needs. I wanted them to look at whether we were structured appropriately in the upper administration, whether we had enough people, too many people, or not enough people, regarding the administrative duties of the Institute. And I wanted them to look at the way that the position that I hold was structured and whether it was being used appropriately. So I wanted some outside input into those things. That task force was composed of these folks from across the faculty and the staff of the Institute, the deans involved as either ex officios or as co-chairs in terms of extension and research, and Ron Yoder, our Associate Vice Chancellor, led that task force, along with 3 outside members from the industry who had long history associated with the Institute, but were not in any industry organization leadership roles. They were not tied to an organization at this point in their life, but knew a lot about the Institute and its history. They came forward, as I asked them to do, with a report in mid-July that gave a series of recommendations in each of those objective mission areas. They did what I asked them to do. I told them to open the book. I told them to put everything on the table, and they did. And they gave us some very, I think, worthwhile recommendations to consider, particularly relative to our physical assets across the state, and ways we might think, particularly in the eastern part of the state, eastern part of Nebraska, relative to the Ag Research and Development Campus, relative to Concord and Haskell, our Northeast Research and Extension Center in the northeastern part of the state, and some of the facilities we have like Dalby Hollock, which is a cow-calf unit in southeast Nebraska. It's a South Central Ag Lab at Clay Center. How could we make those better coordinated? And one of the recommendations that was made, that we're evaluating now, we've not decided whether we'll do this or not, is that ARDC should become a regular research and extension center for eastern Nebraska, just like North Platte is for West Central, just like Panhandle is for Scotts Bluff. That's a substantive change in the way ARDC operates because it currently is associated as a faculty, campus, off-campus unit in the way it operates rather than as an integrated full-scale research and extension center. So what we are doing currently is we are taking those recommendations. There are 2 groups that are working as we speak. The first one on the implementation plan for technology and media needs in the Institute. This is also tied up in a budget reallocation, as you'll recall, from this past year with the university budget. And that report is near complete. We have told the Ed Media folks that they can expect that October 1st, and we'll unroll that new plan for our technology and media needs moving forward October 1st with the plan to implement that beginning with the calendar year in 2015. Another group is also working on this physical asset side, largely around eastern Nebraska, as I just showed you in that last slide, where they are modeling now what that would look like, how it would work, financially what it would look like relative to what we do today. So we're creating the alternatives, looking at those alternatives, and from that information we'll be able to decide, does it make sense to make any of these changes or not? So that's where we are. And I've asked them to have that work completed by the end of the calendar year so that we can begin to go in decision-making mode and in the public, vetting that with the public if we do make changes in the spring of 2015. Now, I want to just point out to you a couple of things before we get into the positions. We've been very fortunate that we've been able to raise a lot of philanthropic gifts to the Institute. You've heard me mention it several times. One of the things that we set ourselves on course to do last year at the retreat was we wanted to raise 25 endowed chairs for IANR. And to everybody we said that to, it seemed like a big, hairy, audacious goal if you're a leadership textbook kind of person, right? It seemed like a really big goal when you're starting from relatively few. Now, these aren't professorships. These are endowed chairs, $1 million and $2 million endowed chairs. Professorships provide some additional faculty stipend that are $250,000 to $500,000 endowments. These are much larger endowments that we were targeting. And we created a list of, I think, 28 that we thought were opportunities for the Institute. And I'm very pleased with the fact that we're making major progress on them. So we now have 5 chairs in place. We had the Nebraska Wheat Growers Presidential Chair that Steve Banziger was named to a couple of years ago now, 3 years ago now, with Bayer Crop Science. They added a soybean chair that George Graff was named to this past spring, again with Bayer Crop Science in collaboration with the Nebraska Soybean Board, and the wheat chair was in collaboration with the Nebraska Wheat Growers. Tom Field holds the Engler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Chair that came as part of that Engler gift a few years ago. Roberto Linton holds the Dougherty Chair in the Water for Food Institute that came as part of the Water for Food gift several years ago. Roger Elmore was just named to the Heerman Chair in Agronomy as one of our new faculty hires this past year from a chair that Keith and Norma Heerman elevated to the chair level just about 2 years ago now. We are very pleased that the Nebraska Corn Board has made the decision to endow a $2 million presidential chair in the area of corn byproduct development. And so one of the new positions that we will be recruiting in our next wave of hires will be whoever the holder of this chair will be. They've not announced this themselves. Anne's looking at me like, make sure you tell them that Ronnie tells you that they haven't announced this yet. They have made this decision. We expect the announcement in the next couple of weeks. And we're very excited about that. So if you're in the cattle business, you might get a little peer pressure here. If wheat, corn, and soybeans have a chair, and water has a chair, anyway, enough said. Okay? So we're excited about that. And now this is a little bit, I apologize for putting a tombstone up here, but it's the only picture I could find that is associated with this great lady. So we had an estate gift that came to the foundation. It had been many years in the making. Chuck Schroeder, when he was at the foundation years ago, knew Miss Allen. That came to the Institute about a year ago, just in excess of $3 million gift that we are using to establish 2 new chairs. And I'm announcing this for the first time today. The first of those chairs will be in the food for health arena. We'll define that a little tighter in terms of expertise area, but in that general food for health arena, again, that we anticipate hiring in this next wave of hires. And that will be $2 million of that gift. Another $1 million of that gift will fully fund the Ron Hansen Chair in Agricultural Banking and Ag Economics, which was an effort that had already been started by the Nebraska Bankers Association and had raised some of that funding to go into that chair and to honor Dr. Hansen for his teaching career here at the university. So we now, if you did the math, have 8. Okay? So we have 8 of these that are funded out of the 25, 28 that we were targeting. We are actively in the market, currently recruiting an additional 4 chairs, and I expect to see that happen in the next 6 months, that we'll see some traction on some of those chairs. And we hope in 2015 to begin recruiting the next 3. So yes, big hairy goal. Yes, it can be done. Yes, we can raise support to enhance our faculty in these ways. And for the faculty sitting in the room, your department heads know about this. They know kind of the areas that we're scoping and thinking about as well. Quickly on budget, and then we'll announce the new positions. We are going into a budget setting legislature, and I want to assure you that we're on sound footing relative to our ability to continue growing. Everything we've done, we've had the funding to do. We haven't promised ourselves any funding downstream. We've had that funding in place. It's been permanent. It's been highly supported for us, and we felt good about that. We are going forward with more growth, so I want to assure you that we do have this funding well underway as well. One of the advantages that the Institute has in the university system is that we are able to keep our growth funding. So we operate as a separate line item in the university budget. And as a result of that, that's why I don't report to a provost. Does that make sense to everybody? That's why I report to the chancellor and the president rather than reporting to the provost on most campuses. So we actually are able to capitalize on our growth. So those numbers I showed you earlier about student growth and research expenditure growth, philanthropic growth, that's why we're able to grow. That's where we're able to generate and deploy those resources in the way that we have to grow. So that's the reason, primary reason. We have seen some modest increases in our state funding over the past 4 years, very modest. We have had increased availability of philanthropic funding I've already pointed to, and we have seen some increases in Program of Excellence funds from the university's central administration. About $2.5 million a year are given out in various strategic areas of emphasis in the university system through these POE funds. We recently received an additional, I think it's $350,000 in POE funds this year for the Center for Virology that's helping us with some of our new hiring. Our increase this year we have about $4 million today we didn't have a year ago. So we have about $4 million in base funding to work with that we did not have a year ago that helps us to continue this trajectory of growth, if you will. Our expectation for 2016, based on the trends that we've been on, is that we would see another $2 to $2.5 million without any new POE money coming in next year's budget beyond salary increases. We have to make decisions of what we do with that growth. This year, I'm making the decision that we're allocating it like this. So it's to support some of the base funding at Innovation Campus that we have to put into that facility in support of it. About, if you total up those numbers there, it's over $3 million in base funding that we'll put in annually into supporting our Innovation Campus activities. We have had several pools of funds we've been putting out to enhance graduate student funding in the units. We did a competitive call for graduate student GTAs last year across the Institute. We're doing that again this year. That was for $250,000 in funding. We provided some support to the Life 120, 121 TAs in that new life sciences course set of courses. We provided some support to some individual faculty that are doing training programs in interdisciplinary graduate education. Melanie Simpson is one of those here, Paul Black, in the effort that they have in molecular mechanisms of disease in biochemistry. We are going to permanentize that funding. So this $500,000 that's there will be permanent, ongoing funding that we will put out into these graduate student arenas for additional support for graduate students. And then we're replenishing some of our benefits pool that we drew down with all of our new hires. Here's an example of one of those graduate programs that we're going to support. And there's been a lot of discussion about this across the campus, led by Brian Larkins and several of the faculty on campus, about establishing a new pilot type of interdisciplinary PhD program in the life sciences. Melanie provided this graph to me that I'm showing you today as the conceptual model of that. Chancellor Perlman and I are very supportive of this. We want to see this happen at a level of 10 to 12 graduate students per year to start, with funding across disciplines where students rotate through labs before deciding what specific discipline area they'll study in for their ultimate PhD. And we're putting part of that $500,000 that I'm showing you into this program to fund it long term. The 5% overhead assessment, which is now campus-wide, started July 1st, as we told you about last year. Those funds will be used for deferred maintenance. We expect $800,000 roughly this year is our expectation of what that will generate of the 5% overhead assessment on all auxiliary and revolving accounts, excepting those that are pass-throughs that we've talked with faculty about during the course of the year. And that money will all be used for deferred maintenance of our infrastructure. And it'll be very transparent how we use those funds as we prioritize where to put those dollars moving forward. F&A, that is new money for us that previously was going into research and economic development in the top part of the distribution of F&A from external grants and contracts. Anybody that's on Innovation Campus, we will get those dollars to deploy back into strategic initiatives for Innovation Campus. So that's what we expect that number to look like based on what the initial population of our faculty will be on Innovation Campus. So we're excited about that opportunity. The state budget, a lot of uncertainty here. We don't know who the governor's going to be. We don't know who 17 new senators are going to be in the unicameral. There are 17 seats up for election this fall. We don't know what that climate might look like, except we expect it to be reasonably good. We're expecting a reasonably good fiscal climate that we'll be working in the legislature. There are several proposals that are being worked on from the university. The Board of Regents has already approved this budget framework earlier this summer. This will be for the 2016-2017 budget years, fiscal years ahead of us, beginning next July 1 of 2015. And they involve economic development for the state. So this is different. The university has not asked for new initiative money in the budget setting year like we're doing this year. And the ask is $10 million per year on top of our base budget and our salaries and all of the base budget of the university for these new areas of economic development. $10 million per year, $20 million total going into the base budget of the university. And it's to support things like Innovation Campus, like the engineering programs between UNO and UNL, and the Peter Keywood Institute, like the Cancer Center at UNMC, programming, not buildings, but people and expertise in the Cancer Center, allied health at Kearney, and these things that have to do with us. So don't hold these numbers hard and fast. These are the proposed numbers that we're working on with the board currently. But an increase of permanent funding to go into supporting Innovation Campus Phase 1, $3.8 million is the number that we're working from today, with some additional one-time capital money that would roll. So we'd use this $25 million for the next wave of building, then we'd roll it out. The developer would buy that building, we'd roll it out for the next building. So reusable money, seed money if you will, that will allow us to continue to populate that 80K per year in square footage, or per time frame in square footage at Innovation Campus in the future. Rural Futures Institute, Chuck is here this morning as the director of that. We have a proposal that's pretty fresh off the press where we think there's going to be opportunity for some $2.5 million in new funding on top of an additional $500,000 that's in this year's budget that was to support the development of the RFI. And the College of Technical Ag at Curtis has had a long time budget deficiency. I cannot tell you how hard we have worked on this because our faculty salaries at NCTA are considerably below our peers, considerably below where they should be for the expertise that we want in those positions. And we have approved, the board approved, moving forward with $1 million permanent budget increase for the NCTA budget, which is substantial. It's like almost a 30% increase in their base budget, which is huge for the opportunities there at NCTA. So we're excited about that. We'll see how the unicameral develops when we go into session in January, but we're already starting to work through that process. So that last hour, I hope, explains that line. So I hope you kind of get why I think this is where we are, this is not where we are. And that's a huge opportunity that we have. It also is a huge responsibility that we have to be able to deliver on all of those impacts that we hope to make with those resources and deploying our resources in a way that's going to make a difference for our teaching, research, and extension missions. Now, I want to talk about this faculty growth plan for phase 2. And I'll do this fairly quickly, so those of you that are trying to count positions, you're going to have to do it fast. I'll show you the names of the positions, the names being the expertise area that we're looking for in these hires, similar to what we did when we announced 2 years ago that wave of positions. I cannot tell you how proud I am of the leadership and the faculty for the way this has played out. It is not an easy thing to do to say to a faculty and staff of almost 2,000 people, what should we hire? That is not an easy thing to do. And it's fraught with all kinds of opportunities for wrong direction. I'll just say it that way, to get sidetracked and to get down in the weeds and be competitive and things like that. This process worked great, not without its moments. There were moments in it that I'm sure a number of the unit heads in the rooms would say, I didn't know if this is going to work out or not. And they might say that when I'm done today, so I better reserve my judgment. But it was a beautiful thing to see these people sitting in a room in Nebraska City with 63 positions that they were excited about and collegially talking their way through what we should do. Harvey and Ellen and Joe Francisco, the new Arts and Sciences Dean, Tim Way, the Engineering Dean, were there for that discussion. And they all walked out of there saying, how is this possible? That you can sit down and have this discussion in a non-threatening way. So I first want to applaud the faculty and the staff and the leadership of the units and the centers for what they've done to make that happen. It's very much appreciated, and it's why we're being able to do a lot of the things that we're doing. So here's where we are. We said that we wanted to hire 36 new tenure-track faculty in phase 1. That is now complete with the exception of we have 3 that are, well, that actually should say 4, that are currently under recruitment at some stage. 3 at the Panhandle Research and Extension Center where we were awaiting a new director before we did those hires. And 1 that's in the allergen research group here in food science. There is 1 carryover position, 1 of the 3 computational sciences positions. We did not find the person we wanted. We carried that forward into this pool. So that position is now part of the next wave of hiring. We had said that we thought we would be in a position, if we managed our resources through the first hiring process correctly, to be able to hire an additional 20 faculty positions. Now, these aren't all new positions. Many of these are replacements, so I don't want to make you think these are all new in this wave. The previous wave was, but these are not all new. Some of these are replacement positions moving forward beginning this year. So that's where we thought we were. We started that prioritization process in February in the units and in the centers, and ideas were brought forth, including the ones that were left on the table from the previous set. There were about 19 positions we didn't hire last time that had been prioritized, to say what should we do next. We also said to the departments, what are core areas that you know you need expertise in that might not have fallen into one of those 5 clusters that we hired in the last wave and round. We went through the process. We started with 63 scoped positions at the retreat. We narrowed that to 40 that were deemed the highest priority. And then the Dean's Council was to decide what to hire. out of those 40, following development of full position descriptions, which happened in August for those 40 positions and apportionment and mission and so forth. When we met yesterday morning with all of those, the Dean's Council met yesterday morning to deliberate through that process. We felt like we were in a position, based on some additional funding that we have coming into play, to be able to hire 34 positions in this wave. So considerably more than we thought originally. Some of that's because we have new POE money. Some of that's because we have new Varner Hall funding, we think, coming to support some of the rural positions. That will mean that since 2012, we will have hired, if we are successful in getting all of these filled now, 101 new tenure-track faculty in IANR in the last 3 years. We will have brought that many new people into our group. That's, when you do the math, that's about a quarter of our faculty. That's a huge number that will have been brought into the mix to add to our faculty, and we're very excited about making sure we do that right. So here are the positions. These are expertise areas. If there is an asterisk on them, that means that they actually fit more than one of these categories. So for instance, soybean genomics could equally be in healthy agricultural and natural resource systems. So it fits more than one of the clusters, so to speak. 8 in the stress biology area that will add to that significant emphasis we had in phase 1. There are several of these that will have the word virus attached to them, that are attached to the virology center. So that first one is an example of that. Metabolic flux analysis, that is in the plant science arena in biochemistry. Soybean genomics, that essentially is the replacement of Dr. Specht, who just retired earlier this summer, with strong support from the soybean board. Cropping system specialist, that's in western Nebraska, in limited rainfall environments. An invasive weed specialist, also in western Nebraska, spanning the Panhandle and west central regions. Microbiologist in plant and soil systems, that goes with the new EPSCoR grant proposal that is in root health and in root system health area, led by Daniel Schachman. Soil chemist position also in that arena. Pollinator health in entomology, again, largely due to the retirement of Marion Ellis, who retired from entomology earlier this year. So those 8 in stress biology. Healthy humans, so this is in the food and health arena. Again, we had significant hiring in this first phase in this arena as well. Cancer and metabolic disease position, that is part of the COBRA that I just talked about earlier. Pharmacology and nutrient biotransformation, also part of that COBRA effort. Neurovirologist in the virology center. Quantitative genomics, also tied to and will contribute to the COBRA effort. Food physical chemist in food science and technology, a core area that food science has been desiring to have for some time. And the last 2 in our CEHS partner departments in poverty and social determinants of health and in health policy, in nutrition and health sciences and in child, youth, and family studies. Computational sciences, this is the kind of the big data computational sciences area that we felt like we needed to have significant emphasis added to really build expertise on our campus. One of these is a carry forward, so that's what the one carry forward means at the top. The one that we didn't hire in phase 1, we're carrying forward into this pool. And those are reflected by the titles you see there. So as opposed to the first wave that was largely molecularly based data, not all of these fall into that category. One does, for sure. The others fall into big image kind of data and field scale kind of data and remote sensing kinds of data at the system level, if you will, that we have needs in as we move forward. So we're excited about those. The Healthy Systems for Ag Production and Natural Resources arena, 7 new positions there. 2 in bovine respiratory disease, virologists that will contribute to the Virology Center, a veterinary epidemiologist in the School of Veterinary Medicine and Biomedical Sciences, an extension veterinarian also in that same school. Climate risk and adaptation in the School of Natural Resources, water quality engineer and scientist likely in the Biological Systems Engineering Department. All of these will decide who we hire depending on what department they go to, depending on who we hire. Swine Extension Specialist in Animal Science, a need there, again, from a retirement, and a Sustainable Horticulture and Landscape Management, largely teaching position, teaching and extension position in the Department of Agronomy and Horticulture. Drivers of Economic Vitality, this is a new category. So there was the desire from the unit heads that they felt we needed this new category added to the previous 5 that we had in phase 1. So these are a kind of new cluster, if you will. The double asterisk on the ag co-ops refers to the fact that that is going to be industry funded. So we have a commitment from the Co-op Council in Nebraska to fund that position for a teaching and extension person in that role. When we get the dollars, we will hire the position, is why I have that there. The italics, those are all positions where we believe we have future funding coming from one of those budget requests. So those last 4 in community development, rural futures area, you can see how that connects then to that hopeful request from the legislature this spring. Agribusiness Management and Ag Econ, Bioprocess Engineer, that is assumed will be the new leader of the Industrial Ag Products Center in the Biological Systems Engineering Department. So those in Drivers of Economic Vitality. In the science literacy area, we chose to make one hire. There was a proposal to have a food systems literacy, another proposal to have an animal systems literacy, and another to have a water systems literacy person added. We didn't feel like we were at the point yet where that was justified. We felt like the next wave that might be justified because this is a brand new thing that we brought in 4 faculty into. We do have a need in 4-H curriculum development, and that position will be funded in this area and be tied to that science literacy group that we have brought onto board. There are 12 of the positions that came forward that we think are high priority for us to identify funding for. So we are not releasing these today, but because of some things that the Chancellor will tell you later this fall, I'm guessing we will have some additional opportunities to do some hiring in the next 18 months. And so these are the positions that we believe fit into that category that we would draw from, that are very high priority, that attach to some of the areas that we talked about earlier. And we have those in the hold pool, if you will. But I expect, I'm serious about this, I expect we'll be able to hire probably at least half these in the next 18 months. So that's where we got to. We're excited about that. We will start that process soon. So just like we did in the phase 1 hiring, we will start the process of getting these positions approved and out and advertised with committees starting in the next 30 to 40 days. So we're excited about those opportunities. We hope you will engage heavily across the Institute like we did the first time and bring on very good talent in all of those positions for the needs that they will address. Now, I'm getting close to the siren going off, so I will move through these recognitions fairly quickly, and I don't do that to diminish their importance at all, but I will move through them quickly so you can see some of the people we wanted to point out today. There are several leadership transitions that are occurring in the Institute currently. One of those is the director of the School of Veterinary Medicine and Biomedical Sciences. Dave Harden stepped down from that role in January of this year, and we've had an active recruitment ongoing for that position. Don Bierman has done a tremendous job, and the faculty tell me that. That's not me saying that, that's the faculty telling me that, in that role since January, and has addressed some things that have been important in the school. We have had Don Reynolds, who is from Atlantic University in Prince Edward Island in Canada. He's also the former Associate Dean of the College of Veterinary Medicine at Iowa State, our partner in the professional program in veterinary medicine. Before he went to Canada 5 years ago, he's been on campus now twice. He just finished his second interview yesterday, finished in Ames last night. And I did make a verbal offer to him last night for the position. I don't have it signed yet, so just take that at that value that we are negotiating with Dr. Reynolds to hopefully assume that position in the next few months. Hector Santiago came on board as the Assistant Dean and Director of the Ag Research Division at Nebraska Experiment Station. Earlier this summer, came to us from Puerto Rico, where he had been in an administrative position with the Experiment Station in Puerto Rico previously. He essentially fills the position that Dan Duncan had before he became Executive Director for Innovation Campus, dealing with infrastructure of our experiment station across the state. So we welcome Hector to our team and we're glad he's here. The Panhandle Research and Extension Center filled its director role for the Panhandle District, if you will, in the state. July 1st, Dr. Jack Whittier came to us in that role from Colorado State University, where he'd been on faculty since the mid-90s. I actually was on the search committee, I think, that hired him at Colorado State. So we were very pleased for Dr. Whittier to be able to join us. Great service by Gary Hergert on the research side and Jim Shield on the extension side in the interim period this past year as we've had that search ongoing for leadership in Scottsbluff. Nick Brozovic came on board also July 1st as the Director of Policy for the Dougherty Water for Food Institute, a very accomplished ag economist from the University of Illinois in natural resource valuation and water policy. One of the side benefits of Nick, other than he was one of the best teachers recognized at Urbana-Champaign on their campus, and his expertise in his research, is that much of his research had been based in the Republican River watershed in southwest Nebraska, one of the real water-stressed environments in our state. So we're very pleased to have welcomed Nick. He leaves tomorrow. He's leaving today. He and I are headed to Vietnam tomorrow for meetings there the next few days around water for food. Ann Willett came on board in April. Had been a project manager in the Ag Research Division in Dr. Clutter's team. Came on board in Innovation Campus as the Director of Strategic Alliances for Food, Fuel, and Water. Reporting to Dan and to myself to help us really fully scope and strategically approach our relationships with public-private partnerships on Innovation Campus. And Ann's in the back somewhere, I saw her earlier. She had to leave, but has been a real asset already. That Advanced Sanitation Alliance meeting I've referred to earlier, all her, working with Steve Taylor and Rolando and Joe Baumert and others in food science. Daniel Schachman was named the Director of the Biotechnology Center. Of course, Daniel was one of our recent new hires in the first wave of faculty hiring and assumed that role in the Biotech Center leadership just in the last several weeks. Now, I want to recognize these next series of folks as being our recipients of the Omtwite Innovation Awards. And you'll recall that we started this process again, and we had a few years where we had not recognized Omtwite Innovation Awardees, and we re-kicked that back into motion about 2 years ago. And so we've had 2 waves, if you will, of these awardees, one each in research, in extension and outreach, and in teaching, as well as one that we decided we wanted to do as a team award across the various missions of what we do in the Institute. So I'm very pleased to announce this morning, and we will more formally recognize them with all of their money and reward at a later event with Ms. Lee Harlan, who is the funder of the Omtwite Innovation Award Fund, and in honor, of course, of former Vice Chancellor of Omtwite and his wife, Wanda. So in the teaching arena, we are very pleased to recognize Dr. David Goslin from the School of Natural Resources. Dave is here. I saw him come in somewhere. Where are you sitting? Dave, stand up, take a bow. Dave Goslin for his work in environmental sciences in the School of Natural Resources. In research, we are very pleased to recognize Dr. Sally McKenzie, the holder of the Ralph and Alice Riggs Chair in the Center for Plant Science Innovation in the Department of Agronomy and Horticulture, for her ongoing work in the plant biology arena. And especially, Sally, we're recognizing you for your leadership on the decadal plan for plant biology this past year in plotting a research path forward for enhanced funding for plant biology nationally in the U.S. Sally, please stand up and be recognized. And in extension, we're very pleased to recognize Dr. Rick Funston, member of the faculty of the Department of Animal Science, cow-calf, reproductive physiologist, epigenetics. This is one I can actually talk about the science in. So Rick is recognized internationally as a leader in fetal programming research in bovines, in cattle. He's stationed at North Platte at the West Central Research and Extension Center, with much of his work being done not only at North Platte, but also the Goodmanson Sandhills Laboratory in the Sandhills. Rick is here. They had to pry him away from the ranch practicum that's occurring out there today, but Rick, congratulations for your extension. And the Team Innovation Award this year goes to an extension team that has been at work for a number of years in trying to address the broadband accessibility issue across the vast expanse of the state of Nebraska. And as you know, this is a limiting factor for growth in rural areas if you don't have access to broadband. And so this team, led by Connie Hancock and by Charlotte Nargis and by Roger Terry, who I think all three are here, along with Becky and Jan, has led that effort as part of UNL Extension, has received national acclaim for their work in this area. We look forward to continued great things from them. So that team, if you would stand wherever you happen to be seated, and give them a round of applause. Now I'm going to mention very quickly a few upcoming events and we're done. I have this lady's picture on the slide because she is new to the Institute, standing by the door. It's like the Sentinel in FFA. So she's standing back here by the door. Her name is Jessie Brophy. Jessie joined the Vice Chancellor's staff earlier this summer as our event planner. So she works with all of our efforts with people in the public with events. She also is coordinating the Heuermann Lectures upon the retirement of Judy Nelson earlier this summer in Ed Media and the coordination of those efforts. Her first task was to organize 3 events under a tent in my front yard on Friday and Saturday night in June. So we had 200 people on Friday night, 50 people for brunch on Saturday, and another 100 people for a dinner that night, and she pulled it off with absolutely great aplomb. So Jessie, we're really glad to have you here. Welcome Jessie to our team. Comes to us from University Housing, where she was the coordinator of all the summer activities for University Housing, including the recruitment of those and the marketing of those to people that would come to our campus. A couple of events to take note in, there's just a few of these. The C.Y. Thompson Library will have an open house on the 16th, coming up in a little over a week, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Please get that out to our students to make better use of C.Y. Thompson, as we're trying to do with that renovation plan we mentioned earlier. The Legacy Plaza dedication of the 4 Ag Secretary statues that I mentioned earlier will be Saturday afternoon, September the 20th at 3 o'clock. That's the afternoon of the Miami football game. So we specifically targeted it for that date so that Clayton Yiter could be with us and Mike Johans could be with us as the 2 living former Secretaries of Agriculture, along with the families of Clifford Harden and J. Sterling Morden. So a big event that we'll have that afternoon here on the green space to our south. Everybody's welcome to attend that. We'd welcome you to come or to browse by the statues at your leisure. They're really nice pieces of art. The Heuermann Lectures program kicks off at the end of this month, September the 25th, with a rollout of the climate change impacts, expected climate change impacts on the state of Nebraska report that we commissioned earlier this year. You'll remember all the debate coming out of the state legislature about the need for a study of this kind and what the scope of that study should be. We offered to do our own study to avoid any of the politics, which I think was the right thing to do. And the team has produced a really outstanding report led by Don Wilhite, Bob Oglesby, Deb Bathke, and Clint Rowe. Don will provide the overview of that report. It's the first rollout publicly of it. in the lecture on the 25th, and then there will be a panel conversation with his colleagues following that rollout. So that will be at Innovation Campus in the new auditorium facility on the Innovation Campus Conference Center on September the 25th. The following lectures, real quickly, one on November the 6th, which I think is a Thursday. That will also be at Innovation Campus. It will be a panel conversation led by Orion Samuelson. Orion is a legend in the radio business. WGN in Chicago, he's the voice of agriculture in Chicago, has been in that role for many, many years, seasoned veteran of ag communications. He will lead the discussion with Barb Glenn, who formerly was with CropLife America, now just recently became the executive director for the National Association of State Directors of Agriculture, or NASDA. Kevin Murphy, who works in the food chain communication side in the animal world. Marcy Tessman, who is the president of Charleston Orwig, which is one of the largest ag media organizations based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, will be panelists with us. And then I'm just going to sit there and kind of poke them, okay? But I have some thoughts on this, and so I'm going to sit on this panel as well with those colleagues. Allison Van Eeneman, who is being awarded the CAST Borlaug Communication Award next month at the World Food Prize in Des Moines, faculty member at the University of California, Davis, will come to speak about animal biotechnology and the issues associated with animal biotechnology to match many of the discussions we've had on the plant biotechnology side previously in the lecture, including one last year that Sally provided for us. Anthony Lasarowitz will be the final lecturer on March the 10th, again in the climate change area. So you can see we're kind of trying to emphasize this climate adaptation, climate risk area in the lecture series this year. We're very pleased to have him come. He's a faculty member at Yale in their School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. We have one lecture we're not announcing yet because I don't have him confirmed yet, but I'm trying to get Rob Fraley here, who was one of the winners of the World Food Prize last year, who's basically the CSO, or the Chief Scientific Officer for Monsanto. And we're hoping to get him here in April to be our last lecture of the year. Last event to bring to your attention, you will have noticed perhaps if you've been by the area north of Ag Hall the last few weeks that there are bobcats and construction crews working over there as well. That is for a new brick area for legacy people that like to have a brick put there in their honor or in honor of someone that is an alum of the College of Ag Sciences and Natural Resources, an effort led by Dean Waller and by the NU Foundation. And that dedication will occur on September the 27th with the initial installation of those bricks and a tailgate that will follow here for everyone prior to the Illinois homecoming game. So with that, I appreciate very much your patience. I told my wife I bet it was 90 minutes, and there it is. We're 90 minutes on the nose. Hopefully this information is very helpful for you. That's why we do it. I want you to know these things, and I want you to be aware of them. I'm really proud of what we're doing. I'm really proud of the faculty and staff that we have. I'm really proud of the growth that we're on. There is nowhere else doing it, and we are. So I'll close with that and ask if there might be any questions that I can answer. Feel free to go and come as you need to. So questions? Anything that I can answer for you about what we've covered this morning or from online as well? Oh, I am reminded by the photographer that those of you who are named Omtwide Innovation Awardees, he would like to see you before you depart right there for a picture. Okay, so don't get out of his sight before we get that done. Any questions or comments from anyone? Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for everything you do. Have a wonderful semester.